You're looking for a gaming rig that doesn't feel like a constant compromise, something that will sit quietly in the corner of your room, fire up quickly, and actually let you enjoy the titles you love without constantly tweaking settings or worrying about upgrades. I get that hesitation. The market is crowded with flashy specs that look great on paper but often turn out to be a headache in the real world. The HP OMEN 16L promises a compact footprint and a big performance punch, but does it deliver the reliability and day-to-day ease you need? Or is it another piece of hardware that looks good on a spec sheet and then lets you down when you're trying to get a game running at 1080p? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest thing that trips people up when they shop for a desktop is the size versus power trade-off. The 16L is marketed as compact, and at a little over a foot wide it does fit on a typical desk or a small entertainment center. That means you can keep your gaming area tidy, and you won't need to carve out a whole floor space for a tower. The downside is that the smaller chassis limits airflow compared with the bulkier mid-size towers you see in other reviews. In practice, you'll notice that the system stays warm under heavy load, especially during long multiplayer sessions or when you push the RTX 5060 to max settings. The fans do a decent job, but the noise ramps up noticeably after an hour of sustained play. If you're sensitive to fan whine or plan to game in a quiet room, you might need to invest in a better placement strategy like elevating the case or adding a small external fan to keep the sound level comfortable. What really matters to most gamers is how the machine handles the games you already own and the ones you're planning to buy. The Ultra 7265F processor, paired with 32 GB of RAM, feels surprisingly responsive for everyday tasks, launching Chrome, streaming video, or juggling a voice chat while you game. When I dropped into a recent open-world RPG that's known for CPU bottlenecks, the frame rate stayed steady around 60 frames per second at 1080p with medium-high settings, and the occasional dip was far less severe than I'd expected from a compact desktop. The RTX 5060 built on NVIDIA's new Blackwell architecture, brings ray-traced reflections and DLSS 3 upscaling to the table without demanding a top-tier power supply. In titles that support DLSS, you can push the visual fidelity higher than most mid-range builds while keeping performance smooth. Storage is another practical concern. The 1TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD gives you fast load times. Most games boot in under 10 seconds, and texture streaming feels instantaneous. That's a huge upgrade over the older SATA drives you still see in budget rigs. However, if you're a collector with a library that runs into multiple terabytes, you'll need to think about external storage or an additional internal drive. The 16L's interior has limited room for a second SSD or a traditional HDD, so expanding storage isn't as straightforward as popping a drive into a bigger tower. One feature that stands out for everyday usability is the integration of Windows 11 Home with Microsoft Copilot. The Copilot assistant sits in the taskbar and can pull up system settings, launch applications, or even suggest performance tweaks while you're gaming. For people who aren't comfortable diving into BIOS menus, this can be a real time saver. That said, Copilot is still new and occasionally misinterprets voice commands, so you might find yourself clicking more than speaking in the first few weeks. Audio is often overlooked in desktop reviews, but the OMEN's DTS:X Ultra Tech does a decent job of filling a small room with spatial sound, especially when paired with a decent pair of headphones. If you're using a full-size speaker setup, you'll still need a dedicated sound card or an external DAC to get the most out of it. The system does include a basic 3.5mm jack that works fine for casual gaming, but audiophiles will likely want to upgrade. Now, who should actually consider buying this machine? If you're a college student or a young professional who wants a single system for both work and play, the 16L hits a sweet spot. Its compact size means it can live in a dorm room or a home office without taking up a lot of floor space, and the 32 GB of RAM handles multitasking. Think Photoshop, video editing, and a game running in the background without a hiccup. The inclusion of the RTX 5060 also makes it future-proof for the next couple of years of mainstream titles, especially with DLSS support. For gamers who are comfortable tweaking cooling or who already have a decent monitor and peripherals, the value proposition is solid. On the flip side, if you're a hardcore enthusiast who demands ultra-quiet operation, wants to overclock aggressively, or plans to run 4K gaming at max settings, this isn't the machine for you. The compact case restricts cooling headroom, and the stock power supply is tuned for the included components. Adding a higher-end GPU or multiple drives could push it past its